Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we are playing a little bit of catch up because, well, quite frankly, a whole hell of a lot of stuff is happening this update. We, of course, got asymmetric battles back. Well, tonight, actually, the day I'm recording this. We got, the Santa Container event, Festive Rewards, Dockyard, Stillwell event, Star Trek event, so forth and so on, right? Clans, brawls, ranked. All this is going on right now in the update. It's quite a busy time in game. So we're playing catch up here with the Prins Van Oranje. The Orange came out during the Stillwell event, and she's one of the ships that is not staying around at the end of the event. The Shinano and the Archfish are sticking around permanently in the armory. Well, I shouldn't say permanently. They're going to be around for at least quite some time in the armory. But the Orange and the Hoffman, and I believe the Chikuma 2 are not going to stick around. So this is a ship that many of you guys have asked for my 2 cents on. However, I don't play this game quite enough to have a stockpile of steel high enough to get more than a handful of steel ships a year, and I chose the Shinano when it came out because it's a ship I've been waiting for. It's a historical ship, the third Yamato sisters, so on the historical basis I picked her up. I am attempting to acquire enough steel through my festive rewards and the dockyard to maybe get the Orange up before she is gone for quite some time, but that time is going to be pretty close to her leaving if I do manage to pick her up. But I wanted to get a video out going over her and giving you as much of my 2 cents as I can as to whether or not you should pick her up. But Sealord, you haven't played the ship. How can you tell what it's like? Well, I know quite a few players that love Dutch cruisers and love airstrikes so much that they took a whole team of them into COTS, and they do very much enjoy the Orange, and they have picked her up and sent me quite a few replays on her and, well, her Dutchness. So we're going to be going off what they've said and off of the replays that I've seen and the stats that I've gone over. So this is probably as close as I can get to knowing what the ship is like without actually, well, having played the ship. But I have played a lot of the Golden Lou, so I do have quite a bit of experience with Dutch cruisers and their airstrikes. So I wouldn't say I'm going into it completely blind. It is at the end of the day. I guess this is where we'll start talking about the ship. It is essentially a Golden Lou with a slightly different main battery configuration and different airstrikes, along with 1 or 2 things here or there to set her apart from the Golden Lou. And while some of those changes might be quite small, it does lead to a different play style. So let's go ahead and dive right on into it. So unlike the Hoffman, which is actually the Schultz up tier to tier 9, I'm sorry, up tier to tier 10, and then supercharged in some ways and given a little bit of differences between here and the Elbing, the Orange is the Golden Lou. It's the same hull. It's literally the same design. I believe it's 1047 was the proposed design for the Dutch Navy. I don't think it was ever actually built, or I don't think they even laid down the kills or anything for these ships before the war broke out. But the Orange has a different main battery gun setup than the Golden Lou. So the Orange, instead of having 9 of the Orange's 283mm guns, I'm sorry, instead of the Golden Lou's 283mm guns, the Orange has 12 234mm guns in quad gun turrets, taking a page out of the Frenchie's book there. So you get smaller guns, but a higher number of them, and a 1 second longer base reload. The Golden Lou has a 15-second base reload on her 283mm guns. The Orange has a 16-second reload on her 234mm guns. Now, the Golden Lou, if you've played her, isn't really all that accurate. This is something that the Orange does kind of correct here. They both have 2.05 sigma, but the Orange has a maximum horizontal dispersion rating of a mere 116 meters, whereas the Golden Lou has a horizontal dispersion of 149 meters. And again, you get 1 more gun per turret. So you're throwing more shells at the target, and they don't zip around as much as the Golden Lou's do. So it leads to a more comfortable dispersion pattern. meaning that you really are getting more shells on target. It looks like it, and it does feel like it because you're throwing more shells at the target, and they are more accurate. Now, they are, of course, a smaller shell at 234 millimeters instead of 283 millimeters. So they are, of course, doing less damage per shell, but you're getting more hits at the end of the day anyway, and it actually outpaces the Golden Lue in HE DPM as well. So it's more of a main battery focused Golden Lue there. Now the Golden Lue, as I'm sure many of you that have played against the Golden Lue do know, is actually a pretty darn good fire setter, which is really freaking weird when you play the ship because half of your shells just don't hit the targets, but the ones that do, you have a 20% fire chance per shell. It seems like they have absolutely no problem setting fires whatsoever. It's kind of funny getting, like an arsonist and a Golden Lue because you're not in a rapid firing HE spamming light cruiser. You're actually in like a Scharnhorst stuck at tier 10. And for some reason, you're really freaking good at throwing HE around. So there's that. But the orange, it's still very much good at HE, more shells on the target, and you do have an 18% fire chance per shell with 12 shells. So you're only sacrificing 2% of your fire chance there, which is funny because it's such a smaller shell, but you only sacrifice 2% of your fire chance. Again, you're throwing more shells at the target, and they're hitting more often, so you're not going to have any problems setting fire on the orange from what I've seen, and from statistically here what's going on. Now, of course, you don't quite have the same punch that the Golden Lue does at close range, and that's kind of where the Golden Lue really does shine, is that when you do get close enough to where dispersion doesn't really matter, her 283mm guns do really hurt when you catch somebody's broadside, be it a cruiser or a battleship. I mean, you have 283mm guns. That is quite a lot of fists to have at close range. Now, the orange, you have 12 234mm guns. If you can find something that they can pin, which is quite a lot because the AP is pretty good from what I've seen, you can pull off some pretty goofy things. But you're also going to be a lot more consistent with the HE and be a bit better of a gun cruiser because of the more consistent HE performance. Well, I guess I could say more consistent gun performance overall out of the orange than the Golden Lue. So gun-wise, if you want the more gunship, orange is a pretty good choice over the Golden Lue. But, of course, that's not what a whole lot of players really pick the Dutch cruisers for. Guns are nice and all, but these guys get planes without having to be, hybrid ships. So what's up with the planes here? Well, with the orange, you have some very interesting planes. So they do take longer to load than the Golden Lue. They take a whopping 160 seconds base. Compare that to the Golden Lue's 100 seconds base load time for the planes. And keep in mind, you don't get two strikes loading at the same time. You have to wait for one to load, and then the other one loads. So, yeah, that's a hot minute in the orange to get both of your strikes up. Whereas in the Golden Lue, by the time, you have both of your strikes up for the orange, the Golden Lue's already dropped both of their strikes, and actually I believe he has a third one already ready to go if he has a legendary mod, right? So that's a little rough. However, the range of the orange's planes is quite a bit better than the Golden Lue. Golden Lue maxes out at 13 kilometers. Orange, 15 kilometers. 15 kilometers. That's quite a bit. That's 15 kilometers. Think about that. That is quite a long arm to have when it comes to airstrikes. And not only do you have a longer range, but you get more bombs. The Golden Lue drops 72 bombs per strike. The orange drops 84 bombs per strike. That's a lot of bombs. And the bombs are better. The bombs on the orange do 8,500 damage, max damage I should say, per bomb. They have a 48% fire chance, and they pin more too. I mean, they're bigger bombs, right? They pin 46 millimeters of armor. That's a lot that you can get through at tier 10. Now, granted, of course, if you're going up against a real beefy boy, right? Like a Kremlin with 55 millimeter deck plating, obviously it's not going to get through that, but you're going to be doing more alpha damage to the superstructure. You have a higher fire chance there. So that's It's a pretty hefty hammer to wield. Now, the downside to this, besides the long reload time, is that the planes do take a bit longer to get there than the Golden Lu. So they're longer range planes. They take longer to get there, but they do a lot more alpha damage. They have a better fire chance too. So the trade-off for that range and the damage is a longer reload time and the slower speed. So if you're very good at predicting where ships are going to be in like 17, 18, 19 seconds, yeah, I mean, you can do a lot of damage with these planes. Now the Golden Lu's shorter range, shorter reload time, a little bit less damage there on the bombs, but more consistent overall, easier to get on target. Now, do keep in mind, if you have never touched a ship with an airstrike, you haven't touched a Tromp, you haven't touched any of the Dutch cruisers or the Dutch premium cruisers, it does definitely take a while to get used to that, figuring out where the ship's going to be, trying to lead them, trying to figure out, where exactly do I need to place these strikes to use them. Because keep in mind, if you missing the Prins Van Oranje, you're going to be waiting for 160 seconds for another attempt at that target. So, yeah, high risk, high reward, I guess you could say there, with the Prins Van Orange's airstrikes. If you consider, having to wait 160 seconds for a new airstrike is a risk, right? But it is rewarding if you can pull it off. Now, the other thing about the Prins Van Oranje too is that unlike the Golden Lu, who has to absolutely suffer with a battleship burn time, the Prins Van Oranje does not. She gets the good old cruiser burn time. So that's just wonderful. And I wish that the Golden Lu had it. The amount of times I've just been, sitting there crying as I slowly burn to death in my Golden Lu are quite a many. And there's nothing you can do about it except for the flag, right? Because cruisers can't build into survivability anymore. So you just sit there and just suffer and cry. Meanwhile, the orange, 30-second fires, so it doesn't really... I mean, obviously it matters, right? But it's just such a shorter amount of time over the Golden Lu. So she's a little bit more... Not a little bit more, a lot better there when it comes to dealing with HE spam in return. Now, again, do keep in mind, in most other parameters, it is a Golden Lu through and through, right? So it is a ship that is big. It stands up out of the water. It is something that's not overly hard to hit, so it's still a big target. It's still going to be catching a lot of shells. Does have Hydra, does have DFAA, still has the good AA that the Golden Lu and most of the Dutch ships have. So again, in the aspects that you want to primarily focus on, your damage dealing capabilities and your survivability capabilities, it's a more gun focused Golden Lu with a high, a high skill floor airstrike. If you can get it to hit, obviously it's doing great damage, but if you miss, you're waiting around for quite some time, with a bit more of an edge into the survivability with the cruiser burn time versus the battleship burn time over the Golden Lu. So is that something that you want to drop 36,000 steel or 30,000 steel with a coupon on in the Steel Will event? Well, I'd say if you like the Golden Lu, if you play the Golden Lu, and you want a more gun focus, a little bit more of a normalized Golden Lu, yeah, I think it's worth the still. I'm currently trying to get it. It's going to be my next still ship if I can get it before it does leave, before it leaves with the Still Will event. I'm definitely getting it then, and I'll do an update video once I do acquire her. But yeah, if you are one of those players that likes a Golden Lu, wants a bit more of a normalized cruiser version of a Golden Lu, I think it's a pretty solid pickup. If you have never played any of the Dutch cruisers and have no idea how to use the airstrikes, I would not burn my steel on this, because those airstrikes are, what make the one of the things that makes the Dutch cruisers so formidable in battle. So if you have no experience with that, you definitely don't need to be picking up the ship with the airstrike that takes longer to load, has a much longer arrival time versus the normal airstrikes, right? You definitely want to train yourself up first, and then the ship is going to come back eventually, right? Wargaming does this thing where they release a ship, they say it's not going to return for some time, and then it's back in like 6 months or a year after it's been released. So if you don't already have a finger in the Dutch cruiser pool, I wouldn't really go ahead and plunge all the way into it yet, especially when it's a steel ship, right? Because steel is such a hard resource to come by. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the Prins Van Oranje, guys. Shout out to Dragon for giving me this replay in the background. Quite an amusing one with what he did to that lion there, right? And of course, showing us the power of the airstrike. But I think he got like a 20k salvo off on the Colombo there, which is so friggin' stupid, right? But yeah, a replay that shows a pretty good bit of all of the Prins Van Orange's nonsense, right? So guys, let me know what you guys think about the Prins Van Oranje in the comments down below. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all of that jazz. Hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.